PGA Nation, we are back. We are back with the CJ Cup. We are full swing ahead this year. The big dogs are coming out to play this week. We're getting the big names. We're getting a challenging course. This week should be fun for a DFS purposes and for golf. Sia, how you doing tonight?
I'm good. I say this every week, or at least I have since the swing season started. I'm so mad at DraftKings. Like, can you just give us? I'm trying to look at the camera. Like, maybe we'll cut this up and we'll tag DraftKings. Can you please give us more contests? Please, just like a few more. They don't have to be like high dollar. They don't have to be low dollar. Like something in the middle, like a couple more $15, three max or $20 three max, or maybe like I don't know, a $75 single entry, something like that. This isn't good. We're doing this show and it's like people don't have a lot of contests, a lot of GPPs to enter into. And I don't get it. I understand the NFL is king, but like, just throw us a couple more bones here. We're not asking for much. These tournaments will fill up. There's enough of a market. If you put in 2 extra tournaments that have, I don't know, that are 1,000 people entries deep, like they are going to fill up. So let's go, man. Like, come on.
Yeah, DraftKings treats golf like a JV sport, right? Like it's like the secondary sport. And it used to be, but I think there's a corner that's turned. Is in the last 2 or 3 years, like when COVID hit and like golf was the only sport on, people really got behind it. And I don't think it is anymore. Golf's its own thing. There's a lot of people who are diehard golf fans. And like you said, these tournaments will fill. I go by the old saying, if you build it, they will come. So give us the contest. The players want it. Spence, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, you guys. Good to have you back on this show. Sia, we've missed you the last couple of weeks that you haven't been here. But yeah, I mean, this is a great tournament. You have all the best players here. And like Sia said, unfortunately, we just don't have the greatest contest selection. So we'll make the most of it. Hopefully moving forward, we see some changes with that. But it's unfortunate. As you kind of just mentioned, Joel, there's a shift in the industry. Like, golf is never going to be bigger than football, and I understand that, but golf is its own entity, and I think there's a lot of people that are diehards, and I think there's a lot of people that play football that would also like to play golf, so it's unfortunate that the contest selection isn't a little bit better.
I totally agree, but you know what? There's still enough contests out there. There's the big GPPs, there's some big fish to go after, there's still cash games. We're still going to have a lot of fun this week. We're heading down to South Carolina. And you know what, Spence? You got your work cut out for you this week because this is a unique course. And there is definitely some knowledge you're going to want to know to be able to get an edge this week because, in my opinion, there's a specific golfer profile that I'm targeting that I think should find some success this week. So, Spence, please enlighten us. How does that look this week?
Yeah, so it's Congaree Golf Club, 7,655 yards, par 71. The greens are Bermuda. We saw Congaree fill in as a replacement venue during the 2021 season at the Palmetto Championship. The course played as one of the toughest on tour all season, producing a scoring total just under par at negative 0.26 shots. And a lot of that had to do with the wasteland areas off the tee that created difficult lies for those that either went wayward or came up short with their first shot. Think of forced carries that go over sand traps that aren't always given, a easy, clear lie once you get into it. So that's one thing to look at. Greens are on the larger side of things, and while that sometimes can diminish approach playing around the green metrics, I believe Congaree might turn into a bomb and short game contest because of the firm and fast putting surfaces that are protected by undulation and bunkers located both above and below the greens. Those two factors will enhance sand safe percentage and short game metrics, and the ability to putt from off the surface will make 3-putt avoidance another tangible way to attack scrambling. Putting is, maybe not the most important here. Proximity from 200 plus yards is going to be my preferred way to put in approach game metrics since 27.9% of shots occurred from that distance in 2020. And then ball striking isn't a horrible look either, since it will be vital for golfers to attack pins from the correct angle. Overall, I'm going to say, players that can gain an edge over the field with their length and short game will be rewarded. Although I wouldn't get carried away with distance when running a model because there are a lot of routes possible for anyone that is neutral with their length. I don't want a golfer. Let me rephrase that. I don't want to say I don't want a golfer. I would be hesitant. If I am paying up in salary, I don't want a golfer that's short off the tee. If it's somebody that's further down the board, I might be more willing to take a shot, but that's just something to keep in mind.
You're on mute, Joel.
I was giving a whole soliloquy on mute. So, but there you have it. Play that back. Feel free to rewind that. You definitely want to use that kind of information to find an edge, to be able to pick your golfers that are going to have a bit of a unique edge on this course. I have to laugh because this tournament, I've said this on a show before years ago. My son's initials are CJ, and we've mentioned that on the show before. In 3 years of doing this show, he's never come in the room while we were recording. And of course, tonight he pops in being a complete menace, screaming. I'm like, he knows it's the CJ Cup. It was his time to come on the show and make his statement. So that's where I went. I had to run out to get him out of the room. So he didn't disturb us, but the drafted is tonight. And we have our trusted old friend joining just to pop in. David is here. We're going to bring him on just to say hi. David, how you doing tonight?
I'm very well. How are you boys? How are we doing?
What's up, David?
What's up? No, it's good to see you and good to be here. I didn't know if I was originally going to be able to make this time, given that in New Zealand it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon, which is sort of smack bang in the middle of the workday. However, I've got what I needed to get done, and I'm now on lunch break and here to chat golf and great tips and see your beautiful faces again. So no, it's great to be here.
So here's my idea, because we have David in here for the long haul, it appears. So why don't I designate myself as C audience and David gets his own team? So if we could change the sheet that we're about to put up, put David in that third spot that he was in last week. I'll assume what I believe to be the fourth spot, which is with the audience. And I can just work with them. How about we do that?
That sounds like a plan. Right on cue, I'm going to pull up the sheet and share it now. We're going to dive into the draft. The audience for tonight, Sia and the audience, are going to go first because, Sia, you so graciously gave your spot up and going to join the audience. The least we could do is return the favor and allow you and the audience to go first. Spencer, you're going to go second, David third, and I will go fourth again. Before we dive into the draft tonight, though, I don't think we recapped last week's draft. Did we?
No.
You know who won?
I have no. See, I'm right now under the mentality like this is off season. When we continue this next year, I'm going to try to defend my title. We'll get back to keeping the point total. But right now, it's a lot of fun that we're having. I don't know who won. I couldn't even tell you. Like, I know my lineup was subpar. I had Ricky Fowler, which was a good pick. And I'm going to assume that wasn't enough to carry me through, but I'm not 100% sure.
I think for the purpose of the show and for speed, let's just assume I won. That seems safe. Then we'll just move on to the show. So, see it, audience, you guys are on the clock. Audience, feel free to start getting your nominations in. We got to get your first pick. We already got one. Ivan, how you doing tonight? JT is a good nomination, but we got to get one more.
1 second.
There it is.
JT.
Sia is deserting you guys, but that's okay. You guys got your first pick in, so it's no worries. Justin Thomas is the first pick of the draft. It's hard to think you can go wrong with Justin Thomas, right? The level of consistency, always a top tier guy. You're not quite paying the top price. You're still $10K. You got to pay up, but not many bad things to say about JT.
You can go, David. I'll give a quick response after that.
I would just say I like JT from a leverage point of view. Just I think that he's going to be one of the lower owned options in that 10K range. I think between him and Scheffler, they're going to be pushing the lower ownership. I mean, bear in mind, right, this is a reduced field again, no cut event. So you are going to expect a little bit higher ownership than perhaps you see week to week. So do take that into account when you're looking at your projection numbers. Don't freak out if you see, say, 15, 16% upwards for a lot of these guys, because being a reduced field, that is just what's going to happen. I don't know if JT's my favorite play of the week. I think that I still hold the fact I don't think that he's at his absolute peak and the absolute kind of elite levels that we've been expecting from him previously. Where I do like him is that I do think that less people will be playing him than the McIlroys and the Rahms of the world. So there's potentially some leverage there to be gained.
Yeah, here's the thing with Justin Thomas. So when I ran my model from a statistical perspective, he was about as well as anybody's graded in a really long time. So I had 7 categories. 6 of them he graded inside the top 2. I think 4 of them he was number 1. And when I took weighted tee to green, he was so decisively far and away number 1. It was kind of alarming to me. The only negative thing that I have to say about him, and I'm going to play him, he's in my player pool. I have no problem with the pick. A lot of the sharp money is against him this week in every single matchup. He's a massive underdog, and the public does seem to be pushing that way towards him. I'm building my model in a sense to where, like, I'm not going to necessarily look at that information and live and die by it, but it does worry me ever so slightly that it's like the sharp versus squares, the pros versus Joe situation coming into play here, to where the pros seem to hate Thomas and the Joes seem to love him. And I'm fine with that. My model loves him. And for that reason, like, there are 2 players at the top that I'm more inclined to play than anybody else. Thomas is one of them, but I mean, there is some hesitation, I guess, from like a GPP perspective. If this wasn't a no-cut tournament, I might have hopped out. But with this being a no-cut, knowing that he's going to get 4 days, and kind of with what David's saying, it's only 16-17% that we're seeing. He is in my player pool this week, and he is one of the guys that I'm going to be building around.
There you have it. I love it. I love it. Spencer, you're on the clock.
So I guess, I mean, the problem that we run into right now is that if there's only 2 guys for me that I'm trying to get exposure to at the top, and one of them's already off the board, and I like all 4. I don't want to make it sound like I would be fine with any of them if it came down to it. But Rory is going to be very popular, probably rightfully so. I don't have an issue with anybody that wants to use him and build differently going down. But I'm going to go with John Rahm at 10,900. I maybe got talked into this a little bit by Sticks Picks yesterday. You know, my model has him, like, if we're just looking from an overall rank sense, Rory would be number 1, and that's including form into the mix to it. And that's where Justin Thomas is getting hurt with it. So Thomas would be 2, Rahm would be 3rd, and Scheffler would be 4th. But I'm going to trust that, like, when every single time that you see a venue where if you think a U.S. Open and you think these total driving tests, like, that's a John Rahm setup. And we know that the game seems to be coming around right now from what we've seen from him recently in some of these other tournaments that he's playing in fields that are nowhere near this level. But when Rahm gets hot, he seems to get hot at a rate that's a little bit higher than a lot of these players. I would say the same thing about Thomas and Rory with that. So the one difference with Rory and Rahm that was kind of the decider is if you were to tell me that this tournament has a 12 under par winner, that sounds more like a John Rahm win to me than it would a Rory McIlroy win. Now, Rory, all his wins have come in double digits, but if you get to this like 8 under, 9 under, he's never had a single digit win. That's the only concern there with it. So I'm going to take Rahm. I probably would have rather had Thomas if you made me pick between the 2, but either one of those 2 were fine for me.
I like that pick. Rahm's one of my favorite guys at the top. I mean, obviously, all the guys at the top are awesome. I'd like to get actually all of you to rank the top 4 because I have Rory, and then I have Rahm, and then I guess JT, and then who am I missing? Scheffler, yeah. So I mean, I'm just curious because I'm gonna do well. I shouldn't kind of tip. Well, I'm with the audience, but I do like the stars and scrubs approach with maybe 2 of these guys up top. So real quick, can we just rank them, Joel? I'll start with you. Just rank the top 4.
You know, for me, from a tournament perspective, my actually number 1 is going to be Scheffler, just because he's the lowest owned, and to me, I think they're all pretty close. I think it's just inches. So I'll take the value play, and he's also the 3rd best price. So for me, I'll go Scheffler. I'll probably go Scheffler, Rory, Thomas, Rahm.
Dave?
For me, it's Rory by quite some distance. Then I'm actually going to put Scheffler in there for second. The reason being is I understand he's trying a new putter this week. we can often see that a simple change of equipment can make a big difference pretty quickly. Other than that, his approach game has been excellent, and his driving off the tee, we know how elite that is. So that would be my second pick, narrowly against John Rahm, and then JT would be fourth for me.
Gotcha. Okay. David, why don't you go ahead and pick since we're on you anyway? Oh, Spencer, I didn't get you. I'm sorry. Who are your top four?
I mean, I would say like 35-ish% of the win equity probably comes from these four. So you can't really go wrong. I'll go Thomas, Rahm, Rory, and Scheffler, but it is very close.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. All right, David, your pick.
And off the back of that, I'm absolutely thrilled that somehow I've lucked into taking Rory McIlroy with my third pick, and you guys have let him fall this far. I mean, we do see some parallels here with Quail Hollow, I think, in terms of the course design and layout. We all know what Rory McIlroy can do around that golf course. The other one that I would liken it to, actually, I'll give you two other course comps. One is nobody's going to be discussing, and the other one I haven't seen either. One would be TPC San Antonio. The reason being is that you have got these wider fairways, but after that, you've got that waste kind of desert area. Nobody's talking about TPC San Antonio as a comp course this week, and I do think that's a possible option to have a look at. Rory's got a third there previously, so he has played well around that course. The other one would be Emirates Golf Club in Dubai, the Dubai Desert Classic on the European DP World Tour. So that was my home course back in the day, so I'm fairly well familiar with it. Again, you're going to see a lot of these waste areas. Your approach game is going to be tested. Distance off the tee is imperative. It always attracts a highly elite competitive field, as we see this week. The other thing I'd say is that you also get these kind of runoff areas. You do get thicker rough than we're going to see this week at Emirates Golf Club. However, around sort of the front and the sides of the greens, you do often get kind of a lot of these like tight lies, firm, fast, sandy. I mean, that ticks all the boxes of what we're seeing this week. And obviously being in the desert, and absolutely no one's going to be looking at that correlating form. Rory's record around the Emirates Golf Club is absolutely immaculate. So he's had 3rd, 2nd, 6th, win, 9th, 5th, 10th, 6th. So, I mean, never finished outside the top 10 around that track. So I think this is a course that's really going to suit his eye. It's going to suit strong drivers, and particularly for Rory, I'm always looking for those spots where he's spoken quite openly in the media about loving these tight, difficult lies and testing your chipping game. For Rory, that is his biggest strength. So I absolutely adore him in the spot, and I think he's an extremely high chance to win this tournament.
Yeah, that's all great, but did you say your home course was in Dubai?
Yeah, so I grew up in Dubai. That's where I started. So I spent 8 years living in Dubai.
Who is this international man of mystery? It just gets better with you, David. This is crazy. Carry on. I didn't mean to interrupt. I did mean to interrupt, but carry on.
Yeah, so fully taking the tour international. I worked at a couple of the golf tournaments in Dubai, and then that was my home golf course. So that's where I sort of grew into the game and started developing. And funnily enough, when I was at the Shriners with Spence, we bumped into Justin Parsons, who's now a golf coach for several of the PGA Tour players. But he was actually my golf coach back in the day in Dubai, where he was sort of developing. So I got to work with him for a bit as well. So just the more you know.
David knew everybody out there.
Well, I was going to say, anyone got a broom to sweep up all these names David keeps dropping?
Yeah.
I'm just jealous, obviously. This is great. We need to do like every show. We need to do like a 2-minute segment. Like we'll just call it something clever, like David's Corner or DB's Corner, where he just tells us something about his life. That's awesome because it's just super interesting. I'm just saying.
I'll give you one more quick story just because it ties in nicely with the Rory pick. So one of the tournaments I was working was actually Rory McIlroy's second ever professional tournament. He was still an amateur. Him and I were both the same age and 16 years old. And I ended up getting the opportunity to score his group and walk around with him when he was 16-year-old, this curly-haired amateur that absolutely nobody knew in the world. We got to the 3rd hole in Dubai, and it's this par 5 downwind. And he absolutely lets rip with driver. And in that group, he was playing with Alvaro Quiros, who's one of the longest drivers on the DP World Tour. And back then he was pretty elite as well, regularly driving at sort of 340 yards off the tee. We get up to their drives, and Kyros's ball's here, and the 16-year-old kid's ball's here, right next to him. And Kyros just looks across at Rory, and he goes, "How old are you?" And he goes, "I'm 16." And he goes, "Holy shit, kid, you're going to be good."
That's amazing.
That is great. Well, yes, you're right. We do learn something every time we have David on. It's funny. I just assumed by your accent you were from Texas, so I learned something. I digress. I am on the clock, and I am super pleased with how this draft panned out. I'm okay this week with fading the top. Obviously, these guys are the favorites, but there's a lot of ownership. Having a more balanced approach in a GPP, I think, is a really unique and interesting a way to go. And my first pick is who I was hoping would fall to me. Is going to be a great course fit. If we're targeting good drivers, this is maybe the best driver on tour in Cameron Young. We know he certainly has the upside. He's going to be able to crush the ball. And getting him in the mid 8K range, I think it's just a really great salary saver to start my team. And I'm going to go ahead right away and pair him with Shane Lowry. Now, Shane Lowry has disappointed a little bit as of late. He hasn't been quite in the same form we'd like him to see, but set a few months off to get right. I think it's a good spot for him to come back. It should be a decent course fit for him if he's striking the ball well. Again, it's another value play at 8,300, a guy who I think certainly can get us a top 10.
Interesting. I feel like Lowry's not being talked about much. And as I look at Stephen Pilardi's Sicily Kids article, all right, he's like 16.8%, which is right where Cameron Young is. So that's like inside the top 15 or whatever. So interesting. Anybody, David, it's your pick coming up next. So why don't you make your pick, and any comments on Shane Lowry? Is that a guy that you might be playing this week?
Look, I do think that we perhaps saw the peak of Lowry about 3 to 6 months ago. He is an elite player. We need to remember that. And I would say the draw card for me is that we probably throw this phrase around way too much, but it's a links style course, which we have seen Lowry have some success at before. So, look, I think that he's a good option. I love the long irons, particularly for Lowry. And the price point, I think, is excellent as well. So, yeah, look, he's not my favorite player, but I'm certainly not perturbed, whatever, if you're putting him in your player pool this week. For my pick, I'm going to go actually the winner of the Dubai Desert Classic earlier this year, who was Victor Hovland. So he's won at Emirates Golf Club earlier this year with a 12 under score. The changes they made this year at Emirates Golf Club, they redid all the grass. They put in new greens on the course there, and it played extremely firm and fast, and it really actually suited Hovland's game. So I'm liking that correlation to what we may be seeing this week in terms of lots of waste areas, lots of fast, quick greens. In terms of the putting, yes, we realise the around the green game for Hovland's going to be an issue. We know that that's an issue. We've actually seen a little glimpse, a little spark that maybe we're getting some improvement in that area. So, if we're looking at these larger greens, I'm hoping that he's hitting a lot and his irons are dialed in. And he's at a third at the Wells Fargo around Quail Hollow too. So if we're thinking that's a bit of a comp course to this track, I like that correlation there too.
All right, I like it. Spencer, what do you got?
I wasn't planning on going this route. I actually don't know how much money I'll have left if I do this, but let me put it in to see. I guess I'll take Scotty Scheffler and figure it out from there. So, like I said, he is my least favorite of the four, but that doesn't mean that I dislike him. And if everybody else is off the board, I will take him. My numbers do actually like him from like a model sense. So we kind of alluded to it a little bit with everybody with like, you guys brought up, he's bringing a new putter into the bag now. That's really the problem of his game. He ranks 70th in this field out of 78 players over his last 24 rounds with the putter. He's number one in my model on difficult courses. He's number one in par 5 scoring. We'll build it out this way and kind of see where it goes from there. It's going to be a difficult build, and I'm sure I can figure it out still with it being a no-cut tournament. But as I said, 35% give or take is about what the win equity is of the top 4 players. And if I believe that like 3.5 out of 10 times the winner is going to come from one of those 4. I guess give me 2 of them and I'll try to build down from there.
I mean, 2 studs. I totally get it. And I honestly think this 6K range is pretty rich with, at least with upside that we know we're going to get potentially, 4 days out of. So yeah, I like that. We have some nominations in there. I'm going to go ahead and nominate somebody since I'm part of team audience. I'm going to type it in here and let's see if he gets seconded, but we have back-to-back picks. So let's see. We got one for Alex Smalley. That's not a guy I'm on. He doesn't really correlate with the stuff that I'm looking for. After we do these 2 picks, though, I'd love to get somebody's opinion on Alex Smalley. I like Tom Kim. There's a lot of guys in the 7K range I like as well. If we don't, oh, there we go. Ivan seconds Tom Kim. So let's go with Tom Kim. And then, I like this one. I'm going to go ahead and back Byron Scott Stallings because I mean, I don't think I have to say much about Tom Kim. Like the guys, like we've talked about it before, he's a cyborg. He just can do it all. Stallings I really like, though. I mean, he's not one of those elite names at all. And in the 7K range, there's other guys that I think have more sort of like flash and star power. But the ball striking and the around the green game, it's a really nice mix for Scott Stallings. I think this is a pretty good course for him. So he's a guy I definitely had my eye on. I have no issue with him or his price. So audience is all aboard there. Byron and Ivan are on Stallings as well. Any comments about either of these 2 guys? Spencer, I'll start with you.
I'm fine with both of them. Like Stallings is 33rd for me in my model. Tom Kim is 10th. Like the drawback from Tom Kim would be the distance if you want to go that route. But as I keep alluding to, I don't think that that's the be-all, end-all for this tournament. We know that his proximity, the short game, everything has been working for him. I think that skill set will play nicely at this venue. And I mean, I guess Stallings at 7,200, I'd see about 6.5% right now. You're baking in a little bit of what he's been doing recently into it. Like you have the 2nd at the BMW, the 13th at the Sanderson, 40th last week in the tournament. But I don't know. I mean, like when I get down into that $7,000 range, there's not a whole bunch of players that I'm like itching to play at this point. So I think he's certainly like one of the options to consider down in that section.
Mm-hmm. Any comments, David, with either of these 2 guys? I do agree that the Tom Kim, the lack of length, it does concern me a little bit too, since I'm kind of going the bomber narrative. Does that concern you?
Look, I think that this Tom Kim guy is pretty good. To be honest, I think I think that's what we've all slowly realized. I mean, he's winning at a rate that Tiger Woods at the beginning of his career, he was winning at that rate. And look, I mean, is he going to be Tiger Woods? No, probably not. But look, I think the upside is massive, and I'm honestly surprised with the price that we're getting on Tom Kim, given the way he's played. I expected him to be in that sort of mid to high 9K range, if I'm completely honest. So I do think a lot of people are going to latch onto that as well, and he'll see some high ownership. That would be my only downside with him. But I think that your ceiling with Tom Kim is extremely high. If he comes out and finishes in the top 5 again, absolutely nobody's going to be surprised.
Yeah, the good news with him is he's not like the ownership isn't super high. He's inside like the top 12, top 15 from an ownership standpoint, but he's right there with, Matt Fitzpatrick, with Jordan Spieth, with even Tom Hoagie. Keith Mitchell's in that range too. So he's not, among that upper crust of like Rory, Rahm, other guys like Max Homa, Justin Thomas, Victor Hovland. They're pretty far up there. So yeah, I like the picks. Spencer, it's back on you.
Yeah, and for the record, I don't think anybody's made a selection yet that like I absolutely hate. I think every single person that's been picked is warranted to be consideration for a player pool. But I don't know how much money I'm going to have left after I do this, but this might be my favorite golfer on the board. And there is some ownership, and Sia, you just mentioned him as being one of the guys that's kind of in that range with Tom Kim, but I'm going to take Jordan Spieth. My model has a massive upside that it sees when I tried to mimic the data to fit Congaree. The main reasons behind that comes down to the shift in weighted proximity. That was an area he was 15 spots better than expected. And then the ability for him to spray the ball off the tee, if he's going to have the distance, which I see enough distance for him that he'll be able to carry some of these waste areas. That works really well for me. So like anytime that you can get all those critical areas working, you allow some of these things that are not as good. Like a really good example of this would be Cameron Smith. And I know like he can't play this tournament, but it's that Cameron Smith, Jordan Spieth, anytime that short game comes into play, you can spray the ball a little bit and you can use your distance with Spieth here. I think he's a really good pick at the price. And it's kind of the same sentiment that we were saying with Tom Kim, that the upside for him is extremely high. He was the best player at the President's Cup. I don't see a reason why he can't continue it here. It seems like the perfect venue for him to continue that with it. So this is going to be a scramble at the bottom now, but I don't know. I mean, I think it's a really strong start with Rahm, Scheffler, and Spieth and kind of just figure it out from there.
Yeah, I've done the calculation. You have just enough money for Hank Lebioda and Jim Herman. So that's good news. There's upside there, but we'll see how that ends up panning out. David, it's on you. Any comments on Jordan Spieth? I know there's definitely a couple of guys that really love Jordan Spieth. Like from the first cut, I know Greg and Rick were all over Jordan Spieth. They loved him. I didn't like him quite as much, but I completely understand the rationale. Joel, any thoughts on Jordan Spieth? Is he in your pool?
Yeah, obviously it's not going to work out for me tonight, but that's the logic I'm going for my lineup, right? If I fade Rory, Rahm, and Thomas, I can go for 6 guys around Tom Kim, Spieth, Lowry, and just be fully balanced with a lot of upside. That's the type of thing I'm looking to do this week, and I think it'll even be different with ownership too. So yeah, I like that pick. All
right, David, it's on you.
Yeah, I really like the pick as well. We know how Jordan Spieth can play when he gets the opportunity to be creative around the greens, particularly. And coming off an incredible President's Cup, so I really like his spot. Can I say that before I make this pick, if Spencer was not in this draft, I probably wouldn't take this player here. But seeing that Spencer is in this draft, for my third pick, I will take Jason Day.
Wow.
Congratulations, you have won.
Thank you.
Well, he couldn't afford Jason Day anyway, for the record.
No, yeah, well, potentially. I mean, it depends if he wants to go absolutely garbage diving at the end. But where Spence has a will with Jason Day, he'll find a way. Yes. I'm going to call it. I'm going to say that Jason Day is back. His approach stats the last 2 tournaments have been absolutely phenomenal. And at the Shriners, we saw him drive the ball incredibly well too. So that ball striking for me is just always a key marker where if I see approach stats improving, I see driving accuracy improving, that's when I want to get onto a player. So Jason Day, obviously a previous winner around Quail Hollow. So if we're thinking that that's a good comp course to hear, then we've already got some evidence that he plays around there. He was also 9th around Quail Hollow during the PGA Championship setup, which being a tougher setup there too. The other course that we haven't really spoken about is Pinehurst number 2. Obviously, where Fazio's had some influence before as well. He was 4th at the US Open there. So I'm loving the trends I've seen in the game. I'm loving his performance at other correlating courses. At 7,500, I'm really happy with his price.
Yeah, I mean, the game, I guess I should let Spencer speak to this, but he's gained on approach 6 in a row. He's gained around the green 4 out of the last 5. And off the tee, he's gained 4 out of the last 5 too. And in some of these in very significant ways. So clearly it's starting to look like the Jason Day of old. But Spencer, my question for you is, are you ready to call it? Is Jason Day back?
I'm always hesitant to say the word back and Jason Day in the same sentence.
That was a poor choice of words.
In Spencer's mind, Jason Day never left. That's
yeah.
I think that there's a lot of positive signs. So when I run my model, I've alluded to this a million times. I don't need to go into an in-depth thing about it. I run it from a 2-year rolling perspective of it. When I compare those numbers over the past 24 rounds, Day is 4 spots better in this field, strokes gained total, 29 spots better tee to green, 35 spots better off the tee. That's a very critical one. Like we talked about it a little bit. He was out driving Taylor Pendrith in a lot of holes in Vegas. He's 15 spots better on the approach play. If you're telling me the irons are back and we're even seeing it, like I know we're talking about a tournament or 2 to begin the year. He's inside the top 5 or 10 in a lot of proximity ranges. He led the field, I think, at the Shriners when it came to ball striking. The putter and the around the green game are the only 2 things that are holding him back. And historically, he's one of the best short game players in the world. So I like the pick. I think that's not going to come as a shock to anybody for me to say that I like a Jason Day selection. But, everybody's always hesitant at the end of the day of what's going to happen. And you hear it's a no cut, you're going to get 4 days in, and you hear Jason Day, and you're like, well, he could still pull out of the tournament. I think that's going to reduce the ownership somewhat. And if you're telling me he's going to be 6% owned, there's not that many guys in the $7,000 range, which is kind of why I built this lineup the way that I did, that I love for their upside. I think you can get a lot of the guys in the 6,000 that have very similar upside. Jason Day is one of those few players where if you told me he came in the top 5, like, it would not shock me.
Yeah, for the record, I said he gained around the green 4 out of the last 5. Technically, it's 3 out of the last 5 since he lost 0.02 at the FedEx, but he's actually gained around the green 8 out of the last 10. So he had, 5 in a row prior to gaining 3 out of the last 5. So yeah, the game's kind of there. The putter's been, hit or miss, but that's like literally everybody on the PGA Tour with some very minor exceptions. So very interesting. I might have to actually play Jason Day this week.
And imagine how much it's going to put Spence on tilt if he's been backing Jason Day for the last 3 years, and I come in at the optimum time and take him and he wins. That's the chef's kiss moment that I'm looking for. Especially
if this lineup wins like the whole thing, like wins 20,000, like Joel's did 2 weeks ago. So speaking of you, Joel, let's go back to back here.
All right. I am dialed in. I'm going to go ahead and play some defensive drafting because I know you guys need some value picks. I'm going to take my favorite value pick of the week, and that's Trey Mullinax. I think this course sets up really well for him, right? We want to talk about those guys who can get distance with the driver. He certainly suits up well. His ball striking's there. I think if he drains a few putts this week, especially guaranteeing him 4 rounds without a cut, I think is going to be a huge edge with a guy like him. I'm going to pair him with Sung Jae Im. Sung Jae Im has been, just red hot recently. And I think what's going to suit him really well is one of his biggest strengths are his long irons. I think that's going to be a big advantage here at this course, where he's going to be able to set up a lot of these holes. And I think, I don't know what the ownership you see on, but it makes sense to me. His ownership will be relatively low considering a lot of people are going to be going up to that top tier, and it's going to be really hard to squeeze him in if you're going for one of those top 4 guys.
So I see Sung Jae right now at 20.1%, which would be the second highest owned player.
Okay, that's really high. Wasn't at all what I was hoping for, but
I still like him.
So for whatever it's worth, and it's a lot, but it's a very small difference between Steven and your number, Spencer. But Steven's got him at 18.2%, which actually gets him like 7th overall, as opposed to top 2 or 3. So again, those are very thin margins. So like obviously the difference between 18.2 and maybe something like 19.8 or something like 20, it's not a huge difference. But just pointing it out to Spencer's point, he's going to be inside the top 8 in terms of ownership. So certainly makes sense. All right, David, back to you.
Yeah, so again, I don't mean to pick on Spence in this draft. I do apologize, Spencer, but I've got to now play the kind of game theory aspect of going up against Spence and the range he's kind of going to be in. And I'm actually going to need to dive down and grab one of the guys that I like in that range, which is Danny Willett. It's 6,200.
I can't fill out a lineup anymore. I mean, it's over. It's actually over.
Look, I love the way that Danny Willett profiles for this course. We're looking at the approach stats over 200 yards. Danny Willett's actually leading the entire PGA Tour this season so far. So his long irons are going to be a great asset around this course, which we do know is a bit longer. He's got a pretty immaculate record in Dubai. If I'm looking at that as a comp course, he won the tournament in 2016. Surprising correlations between Emirates Golf Club and the Masters as well, by the way. So both Danny Willett and Sergio Garcia won at Emirates Golf Club the year that they won the Masters, just FYI. 2015, 2014, he's 13th there. Of course, last time at the Fortinet, we saw him finish second. He hasn't been on the course since. It was pretty dramatic in terms of that victory, but he gained across the board and he gained multiple strokes across the board to the rest of the field. So I like the way that his game's trending. I just think he's just such value at 6,200.
Yeah. And I'm assuming the ownership is pretty low on him, which I'll check on if nobody already has. I like the play. So Spencer, you're a little stuck. You're in the territory of names you might not be able to pronounce. So have at it with your next pick.
I mean, this might be the biggest thievery job in the history of this show before.
I do. It's nothing personal. I just had to. I've got to protect my own team at the same time, Spence. So it's just the way it's rolled.
All right, so I will take one player. We'll go there, and then we'll try to build it out from there to see if we can figure out a lineup. And it's going to take a couple players off that I did want, but let me see what his price is. So at 6,400, I guess I will take Gary Woodland. He's gained with his driver and irons in 10 consecutive contests. It's really just the putter that's held him back. He's gone ice cold. He's averaging 3.03 shots to the field ball striking over the past 3 contests. When you look at the results, that's a missed cut, a 64th, and a 51st. I don't know if I necessarily trust him over 4 days, but like I have to find upside where I can at this point. And he has probably the best upside that I see left on this board right now. So, give me him and then I'll try to figure it out from there. But that Danny Willett selection being pulled from me is really difficult to round out this lineup now.
I love it so much. I like that play. I like the pick. We already have any comments, Joel? What do you think?
I have no comment.
Joel's just in stunned silence at my behavior.
So here's the thing about Woodland. It gets to a point, and that's why he's priced so low, because I went into this tournament thinking like I want to play Woodland, and I was like looking for him. I was looking for his price specifically because I knew he'd be low. I didn't realize he'd be that low from a pricing standpoint, 6,400. But the putter is so horrific. Like it is bad. We're like in Kyle Stanley country here, like Brendan Steele country. And with that said, if he has like somewhere even remotely close to a neutral putter, like there's tremendous value, especially getting this guy for 4 rounds. Like I this is one of those guys where, back in the day before I looked at stats, I would just like kind of watch golf and be like, that guy looks pretty good. And I just have a feeling about guys. Like Gary Woodland's one of those guys I just kind of have a feeling about this week. And it could be completely wrong, but like, I get it. I actually think that's a really smart tournament play. I truly do. So I'm a fan.
It's a no-cut tournament where, like, would you be shocked if on Sunday all of a sudden he puts together a round and he backdoors a top 15 or 20 finish? Like, I think that's within his range of outcomes. And at 6,400, like, just let me shoot for the upside if I'm going to get 4 days out of everybody. And yeah. I don't love the ownership. Like, that's the one downside to this. I'm seeing like 10% right now. But
oh, really? Okay.
I mean, that's a negative. I think a lot of people like him for that, the upside that he presents. But as I keep saying, I mean, it's like him or Bio Kim. I don't know who Bio Kim is.
It's a fake person. All right. So we already have one guy. And David, I'll get your comments on Taylor Montgomery. He's been nominated and approved. Ivan, Byron have nominated Taylor Montgomery. I'm always one of those guys that doesn't have like a really hard and fast opinion on Taylor Montgomery. But I know he's starting to become popular. He's been popular over the last few weeks. Certainly a big talent. I don't see it as much as other people do in the metrics, but that doesn't mean I'm right and everybody else is wrong. Certainly super talent. David, any thoughts here at 8,200 Taylor Montgomery?
I really liked Montgomery in the first couple of tournaments this year, and I did play him in the first 2 tournaments for the new season. My concern would come from the fact that he lost over 4 strokes on approach at the Shriners in a tournament that we kind of expected him to kind of continue, I guess, in the vein that he'd been playing. I mean, in saying that, he still finished 15th of that tournament. So I mean, this kid's incredibly talented. I think he's got a huge future ahead of him. My concern would be, is this the best spot to play him, in which I think he probably is going to carry some decent ownership, because he's just his results with you. If you weren't looking at strokes gain metrics, right, you'd see 3, 9, 15 in his incoming form, coming straight off the Corn Ferry Tour. And if you're just a casual DFS player, you go and get all excited over that. Whereas actually his approach game was fairly terrible at the Shriners. So that'd be my reason. I think if I was looking for one to get off him, would be that approach game last time out.
So I'm glad you brought that up, because our second guy, and I'm so glad this guy got nominated, because this is a guy I was talking about even a couple days ago. So Lee Hodges, Byron, Ivan, I certainly approve of Hodges. So he's going to be on our team. I like what he's able to do for us from a flexibility standpoint, because I believe that looks like we have like 9,200 left for our last guy. But Hodges, because it's funny, David, you mentioned finishing positions when it comes to Taylor Montgomery and metrics and how that measures up. If you were to not look at finishing, and I know it's a ridiculous exercise, but if you were to not look at finishing positions for Lee Hodges, and it's not that they're terrible, but they're not, it's nothing great really. And you just looked at the ball striking, off the tee, approach, around the green, putter, like it's good. It's really, really good. Especially, I'm saying for a guy that's 6,300, it's actually kind of elite. And it's interesting that it's, do the finishing positions end up meeting the metrics, or do the metrics end up meeting the finishing positions? And in a tournament like this, where I get 4 rounds with a guy who's gaining ball striking, let's see, 4, like 5, 8, like this looks like 9 out of the last 11 gaining ball striking. He's gaining around the green very consistently, and he's gaining with the putter pretty consistently over his last 6, 7 tournaments. It just seems to me that the finishing positions should be better for this guy. And if they were even moderately better, this guy would be 7,300 instead of 6,300. Any thoughts? Am I just kind of looking through like rose-colored glasses here, or is this a guy that has pretty great upside?
I like the Hodges play. The reason his finishing positions haven't been what we'd, I guess, hope from the ball striking is that either his putter or his around the green game haven't both clicked at the same time. Yeah. So it's not that he can't chip, and it's not that he can't putt. He just hasn't married them up on the same event. And in terms of an upside perspective, I kind of love that situation where it's like he can do both. They just haven't both happened at the same time in a given week. So for 6,300, I love the upside that you get there.
Awesome. I'll take it. Spencer, first of all, any comments on Hodges? Is he in your pool? And go ahead and make your second to last pick.
He wasn't. I think you guys all brought up good points for why he's in consideration. And when you get down into that range, there's only so many options that are probably relevant. Like, not to keep picking on Bio Kim, but when it becomes like him and Bio Kim at the same price tag, like I think Lee Hodges has more upside at that point. Mm-hmm. All right. I guess if I'm going to go with this like bad putter narrative with Woodland, should probably go with it on a guy who has lost 4.51 shots to the field over his last 6 trackable starts with the putter. Any guesses who that would be before I give the name?
Brendan Steele.
Luke List.
Oh, even worse.
The other one.
Oh my God. We have to put up we're not going to do this, but putting up List putting with Steels and Woodlands over the last, let's say 20 tournaments. It's epic. It is absolutely epic. Sorry, carry on, Spencer.
Yeah, like that List is probably some of the worst I've ever seen in my database before. And the ball striking's been immaculate. He's gained in his last 13 starts. Maybe sometimes you just need a putt to fall here and there to, provide a big round. I do think the game is percolating with upside if he can get hot, but like it's the same narrative. If like how many players in the $6,000 range, in my opinion, provide the same amount of upside as like a Gary Woodland or a Luke List? I think it's a very small sector that we can find down there. And I don't know. I mean, like, obviously I'm forcing this lineup a little bit with the position I'm in right now. I much rather would have played a Kurt Kitayama if I could have gotten up to 7,100. But any time that you get these tests that are a little bit more challenging, putting does get reduced. And if you're telling me that the winning score is going to be 12 under par and List gains some extraordinary amount with his ball striking, if he doesn't lose like 10 shots with the putter, all of a sudden he can compete by being even par in this tournament, over 2 days. And then he gets a hot day on Saturday, and then all of a sudden he's in the top 10 or 15. So I'm going to go with that narrative. I know it's very volatile to put Woodland and List into a lineup together, but I guess it could be worse. I could have Webb Simpson in this lineup, which is probably how this is going to end right now if somebody doesn't stop me.
Oh, that's great. By the way, when Spencer said if he doesn't lose 10 with the putter, that was not hyperbole. He was saying like literally if he doesn't lose 10 with the putter. Like, that's a possibility with Luke List. David, it is on you. You got 2 picks left. Let's race through this last round and get to our first round leaders and outrights.
Yeah, I mean, Luke List losing 10 strokes with the putter is also a possibility just in round 2. Like that is that's what
I was saying.
That may happen. I'm gonna go. Actually, I'm gonna play someone a little bit different to the narrative, because what I'm seeing at the moment, I guess, from the industry is basically everybody is like get on Bombers is just the message that is getting put out there. But we have seen success even at this track at the Palmetto Championship by players who are able to get up and down and run the greens and putt lights out. And so if I can get a player like Christian Bezuidenhout at $7,200, who's cheap, who's great around the greens, who's an elite putter, who's coming in with excellent form, who hasn't missed a cut since June, I think that's fantastic value and is going to differentiate your lineup to a lot of other players who are just simply going to go to say the Wyndham Clarks of the world, who are just going to carry huge ownership and aren't in the same sort of form that Christian Bezuidenhout is.
Yeah, I like the strategy there.
I like that pick also.
Joel, we got back-to-back picks to close out your team. You got Cameron Young, Shane Lowry, Trey Mullinax, Sungjae Im, and...
So I'm gonna go ahead and take Tom Hoagie. He has just been red hot. I mean, he's got 4 top 15s in his last 4 tries. He's another guy whose irons have just been right there. He doesn't really have a major weakness. I actually think he's a little bit underpriced. I'll keep running that hot streak here with him heading into this tournament. And in my last pick, even though I have more salary, I'm going to go with Hideki Matsuyama to round this team out. I think this is a good course fit for Hideki. I think if he makes a few putts, he drives the ball well. His long iron should tee up here. I think he can really compete. Top 10 certainly is in play for him this week. And again, it's really kind of rounds out my team and what I'm trying to do with this more balanced approach.
I like it. All right. David, what do we got for our final pick?
Right, no qualms for me on either of those picks. Again, I'm gonna play someone. I think that psychologically it's really interesting, right? A player wins a golf tournament, and then we decide that we're not going to play the golfer because he won last week, and surely that can't happen again. And however, if a player comes in and he's finished second or third at the previous tournament, we're all high on him, and we're all just like, oh, like this guy's a great pick. So I'm going to go Keegan Bradley. I think that he's coming in with just fantastic form, 5th in a win. He's got great correlating stats to other courses that we think are comp to here. So Texas Open, he's finished 8th, 23rd. He's had a 4th around Pinehurst. He's got another 9th around TPC San Antonio, and he's got an 18th at Quail Hollow. So the thing I love with Keegan is obviously his long irons is probably his best aspect of his game. So anything over 150 yards, Keegan Bradley can just get absolutely dialed in. And I think that he actually sees a bit of a drop in ownership from the fact that he won last week in kind of an emotional fashion, which I'm happy to take the lower ownership on.
I love that play. Absolutely. I'm checking on his ownership now. So it's 11%, which again, 78% field. That's not that high.
It's
honestly.
not bad.
Yeah.
No, not for a player who won last week, right?
Right. All right. So we are on Spencer. You have a decent amount left, 6,700. What's it going to be?
There's 3 players to me that this decision comes down to, and I'll name all 3 of them. So, surprise, surprise, Webb Simpson. Chris Kirk at 6,600 and Alex Smalley at 6,600. I am going to go with Alex Smalley over those 2. I just think that there's a little bit safer of a floor. Like maybe Kirk and Simpson have better upside, but they're not bringing in the best form, especially Simpson when we look at him. But I don't know if Smalley can produce on these par 5s, which is what keeps holding him back. I do think the sky is the limit for him, and I kind of make this argument every single week with him that he's a better player than the price tag that he gets, and he never really gets out of this range that he's in. But he gives you these top 20 performances here and there, and if that's what I'm looking for, and I probably need a little bit of safety after going Luke List and Gary Woodland, if Smalley can just be average on the par 5s compared to the field, I really like how the game sets up in other places.
Yeah, actually, we had Ivan who was on Smalley, nominated Smalley earlier. So certainly have a fan in the audience there. Joel, Smalley in your pool?
He did not make my pool, but that's more just approach. I think if I was going for a more stars and scrubs approach, he would be someone I would look to toward the bottom. But I'm trying to fade that lower end as much as I can.
All right, I will go ahead and put a nomination in, but you don't have to back it if you don't want to. I'm not absolutely stuck to it, but we got 1 player to draft. We have 9,200 left. I think this guy, at least from the betting board, And Spencer, you're good about talking about this when it comes. Oh, there we go. Byron backs Max Homa. You might have talked about this on the Better Golf Pod with Sticks Picks, but the idea that Homa is only 9,100, but is basically tied for fourth on the board from an outright standpoint. He's plus 1,600 on DraftKings with Justin Thomas. Obviously, that does scream value to us, right?
Yeah, I think he's in play in the $9,000 section, and we see it in some of the movements that have taken place in the market. Like if you shop around, I still think you can find some better numbers out there, but I have no problem with the play. He was one of the golfers that was like, I narrowed down, like, so when I'm looking for, like, this is a 78-man field, I want my exposure to these players to be as minimal as possible. Like I want to have as small of a pool as I possibly can. So there's, I don't know, 8 guys for me, give or take, that I want to be like the core that I build around. And then I'm going to sprinkle in guys from there. And Max Homa is one of those players that's going to be put into lineups. So he's in my pool. He's inside the top 6 of my model. I would rather play him than a Sam Burns if you're directly comparing and some of the other guys in that range. So I like Homa this week. I think that we're seeing like a massive jump from him. And there's a player that if we get to the section to talk about who we're surprised didn't get picked, I think like Max Homa, Sam Burns, and then this guy will be that player of this year when we get to there. But these are guys now that have taken a step in their game, and Max Homa deserves the price tag that he's at.
Yeah, and for the record, Max Homa is going to be very popular, partly because of the value that people see on the betting board versus where he is on DraftKings. But to the credit of this SIA audience team, that while there are some chalky guys, Tom Kim isn't super highly owned. Scott Stallings is certainly not super highly owned, and Lee Hodges is in that sort of 5% range. So there are some guys that we have that have offset some of the chalk that we have.
There you have it. Folks, don't forget to hit the like button. Feel free to give us a follow. We will post these boards, and we'd love to hear your opinion. Who do you think is going to win? Let us know. Pick your favorite team. We will check back next week and find out who the winner is. Track on the results. One thing I wanted to address before we move out of the draft, one thing I'm a little surprised by, I thought about it, just didn't feel good. Are we done with Colin Morikawa?
Well, for me, it was just the short game. Like when I compare Colin to Victor Hovland, and I think David alluded to this, we see, and actually Byron and I had a conversation about this on Twitter earlier this week. We see some trends in a positive direction when it comes to the around the green game with Victor Hovland. And for the record, he's also been a better putter than Colin as of late. So when it comes to the short game in general, I just give the nod to Victor over Colin. Not that those guys really need to be grouped together, but they all get the same knock, right? They all have sort of that short game knock from time to time. So I guess my preference there is to take Victor over Colin, and I just bump him down because I do have somewhat of an emphasis on around the green game. And while Hovland is so weak there, he is at least trending in the right direction.
I hear you. And, Colin has just been so, he's had some weeks where he's just been so bad with that putter that it's like his ball striking can be elite, but you just miss every putt. You just can't compete that way. So hopefully he turns that putter around. I'm sure we'll see him back at the top sooner than later, but we're not done yet. We still have to touch on some outrights and, of course, first round leaders. We'll start in the outright market for tonight. Spence, you want to kick us off? Who do you like in the outright market?
Yeah, just very quickly before I get to that. So I'm most surprised. I think the best player left on the board was Matthew Fitzpatrick. I was trying to figure out a way to take him, and if I didn't go the Scheffler Rahm route at the top, he would have been the pick that would have slid in there. The player that I was mentioning with the Homa and Burns would be Aaron Wise. And I think Wise we're going to see over the next year. I think he's going to become a $9,000 plus golfer in a lot of these events, and I think that the upside is there for him. So I don't love the ownership in this event, but he's somebody to keep an eye on that I think has like actual win equity in a lot of these tournaments, which I did take Aaron Wise at 65 to 1. That opened on Bet365 to begin the week, and that number has been in steady decline since then. I took Justin Thomas at 16 to 1. That was a DraftKings price. Jordan Spieth 33 to 1. That was on Bet Rivers. And then Tommy Fleetwood 80 to 1 on DraftKings. I think that Fleetwood in all markets at this point is kind of getting a reduction because of this lack of perceived win equity that he has. I don't think he's that much different or should be that much different than a Shane Lowry, a Tyrrell Hatton. I think he's in that same range as those players. I'm not saying that he's necessarily a better player than them or should be priced higher, but I think he's in that same range when you look at it. And he's double the price in the outright market to a Shane Lowry.
There you have it. I like it. I like it. David, how about you? Who do you got in the outright market?
So I'm going to give out 3 names here, and then the other 3 will be dropped in the Win Daily Discord for gold members. Just so you know, we've got a promo at the moment. Not only is it only $5.99 a week, but if you jump on to Twitter at Deep Dive Golf, you're getting a month free when you join Win Daily. So come in and you get to chat to all of us directly and ask all your questions. So the 3 names I'm going to give up. The first is Rory McIlroy at 8-1. I very, very rarely will go top of the board when it comes to betting markets. But even at 8-1, I'm still seeing value within that number when he should be about 5.75 is a fair value for me in terms of winning this tournament. So at 8-1, I do get some value there, and I'm happy to take that edge. The other name would be Jason Day. I'm taking him with 8 places at 66-1. You can get him at 70s. Some places 75s, but with lesser places. I think with Day, with his range of outcomes, I'm more looking towards taking the 8 places on him. And the final one will be Kristen Besadenhout at 80-1 for me, and the others will be dropped in Discord later this evening.
I love that.
I love it. I love it. How about you, Sia? Who do you got in the outright market?
I actually have 2 guys here, and the part of the reason is because I agree with David on the Rory play. I just couldn't bring myself to give out a guy plus 800, but I kind of agree with David. Like this is of the 78, like how many are competing with Rory ultimately over 4 rounds? And so you narrow that pool to, and I'm just making up numbers at this point, to like 15 to actually win this tournament. And I just think Rory is so elite relative to most of these guys. Such a good course fit, coming in with such good form, has the long-term form as well. And by the way, Edward, thank you for saying that. Subscription is worth every penny. Just to pick up on what David said, and whether it's Edward or Ivan, thank you, Delbert, everybody, Byron, for being in here. But one thing that's, we don't make very clear is that we literally do every sport. And, listen, let's be honest about golf right now. Because of the lack of tournament selection, our golf Discord may not be as busy today as it will be, I don't know, when the season starts in January and through February, March, April, May, June, July, so on and so forth, where it's just extremely active. So we're still active in there, but because of the lack of kind of selection, swing season, all that stuff, I only bring that up. It's not a knock to golf. It's just really a credit to all the other sports. Like if you jump in the NBA Discord right now or read those articles, or you jump in the NFL Discord, like literally right now, or especially over the weekend, Saturday, Sunday, like there's so much information being exchanged that $5.99 per week that David referenced, it's for everything. And so even when golf is slow, it is fast season in so many other sports, and you can just kind of pivot from one to the other. Like maybe you're successful in golf one week, but maybe you're new to NFL and NBA and you're successful in those sports another week. So definitely something to talk about when people bring up like, where you subscribe. I mean, the follow-up question is usually like, oh, like how much is that a month? And it's usually like kind of a big number. So I'm just kind of saying like it's not a big number for Win Daily. It never has been, because we don't want it to be a big number. We want the family to be as big as possible. So something to consider. So I'll give 2 outrights. I agree with David on Rory McIlroy. Tom Kim at 28-1. It's a big enough number for me to say, okay, I'll just go ahead and throw some money at Tom Kim because he's so good. And Victor Hovland at 28-1. So those are kind of my 3. It's really just 2 that I'm giving out, but I subscribe to the Rory play, and I'm doing that so that I can give 6 first-round leaders. Because I don't want to give like 6 and then 6 here and 6 here, because it's a smaller field. So I want to be able to kind of like splash around in the first round leader market. So I have 6 guys there, which we'll get to.
Can I just quickly jump in with that 28-1 number that you're getting on DraftKings at the moment? That's so much better than what you're getting in international markets. So he's sort of 21 to 23s on like Bet365 and William Hill. So that 28-1 on Hovland's extremely good value. Yeah.
Oh, excellent. That's good to know.
Hey, yeah, Hovland.
No, you said Hovland, but both him and Tom Kim are 28-1. So I just wanted to make sure we were talking about Hovland. Yeah. By the way, guys, I'm surprised he didn't get drafted. Mito, I'm actually surprised he didn't get drafted. He'll be on some of my teams. I like Cam Davis a lot this week. Like, I really like Cam Davis a lot this week. I think he's a really good course fit. So that's another guy. SH Kim, I think, is super sneaky as well. I'm hearing a lot of people that kind of quietly like him. So, Joel, did you give out your outrights already?
Not yet, but I will double down on Kim and Mito and Davis. All 3 guys were in my player pool of guys I was thinking of drafting. Didn't work out for salaries and how the draft went, but definitely guys that were on my radar in my player pool as well. Just a couple outrights for me. my longer shot for the week, I like Sahith Theegala at 55-1. I think he's a guy that can get a hot week and take down the tournament. Hideki Matsuyama at 40-1. And my pick to win is Cameron Young at 28-1. But before we wrap up this week, we still have our first round leaders. This is where we make our money. We bet a first round leader almost every week. And if we don't hit one, we're at least in the top 5. So we're hot. We're coming back with another one. This week, we're going to hit one. I just can feel it. Spence, who do you got for first round leader market?
I have 5. Justin Thomas, 25-1. That is at William Hill. Tommy Fleetwood, 55-1 on DraftKings. Keith Mitchell, 65-1 on FanDuel. Gary Woodland, 90-1 on DraftKings. I prefer Woodland in this type of market, and I also prefer Luke List, which is my last play at 95-1 on FanDuel. This is more of where I'm trying to get my exposure to them. I think it works in GPP contests also because of the upside that they present, but like it wouldn't shock me if Woodland or List put together a round where they made a couple putts and all of a sudden they shoot to the top of the leaderboard. And I think 90 and 95-1 are really good prices to take a chance on that.
I love it. I love it. David, how about you? Who you got in the first round leader market?
Yes, I'm giving out 5 as well. Rory McIlroy, wouldn't be surprised if he comes in. So he's 16-1 across all bookmakers. We've got 66-1 on Alex Smalley. I like that play across one round. We've seen him go pretty close recently in terms of first round leaders. Another who I really like for a first round leader is always Sebastian Munoz. He's got a great history around first round leaders, and he can get pretty elite with his long irons as well. JJ Spawn, winner of the Valero Texas Open, San Antonio. Again, I trust him a bit more for one round, so 66-1. But my favorite play would be Kurt Kitayama, 55-1. One thing I'd say as well, where I'm trying to get a little bit different with first round leaders this week. Usually I go AMT times. I actually kind of like the PMT times this week. Just simply, it's going to be so cold. Like we're talking, like if you guys looking in Fahrenheit, like 35 to 40 Fahrenheit at 8 in the morning in this part of the world. So when we're looking at these like incredibly cold conditions, it's not the most pleasant to play in. The ball's not going to travel that far. We're playing on a really long course. There's basically no wind all day. So there's no kind of like wind that's going to pick up in the afternoon or anything like that. So I am liking actually going a bit different and playing some PMT times this week for my first round leader plays.
I really like Kitayama from a DFS perspective also. Like if you don't have him in consideration for your player pool, I think you should like at least consider putting him in there.
So real quick, I talked to PGA Tout earlier this evening, and he's going to come on to the show with us very soon for the record. And I actually asked him, give me a sleeper play and give me a first round leader play, just kind of off the cuff. He mentioned Harris English as the sleeper play for whatever that's worth. I didn't really look into it. We kind of know where Harris's game is at right now. I suppose he's healthy. It's getting a little bit better. But I asked him his first round leader play, and he rattled off immediately Kurt Kitayama. So that's pretty cool that you both like him. I might have to add him to my already long card. So that's super, super interesting. Is it my turn?
Not yet. I'm going to go first. We got you in the closer slot.
I just wanted to get that name drop in there.
No, I agree. I love Kurt. I mean, I've said this before. I think Kurt Kitayama is a first-round leader guy, right? Like, he tends to have his best rounds in the first round. So, in a tournament where you like him, I love playing him in a first-round leader slot. I just have a couple plays for first-round leader this week. I do like Tom Hogue at 50-1. He's another one of my first-round leader guys. He doesn't tend to pop in first rounds. I also like Aaron Wise at 40-1. And our first-round leader this week, my favorite play, is going to be Jordan Spieth at 35-1. That's it for me. Now, Sia, enlighten us. Where should we put all of our money?
So I just changed one of my guys like on the fly, and it wasn't because of any. I don't think he was mentioned in the first round leaders, but I had Tom Kim at 35-1, and I'm switching him out for somebody that I like even better as a first round leader specifically, and that's so I'll start there. He's 35-1. He's the shortest odds I have. Cameron Young. 35-1. I swapped Tom Kim out, so take that for what it's worth. Cameron Young, 35-1. Sahith Theegala, 45-1. I do like him. Again, these are first round leaders. Keith Mitchell at 50-1. And I'm okay. And Mito Pereira at 55-1. Lee Hodges at 90-1. And then the big ticket winner chicken dinner, the guy who's actually going to be the easy button first round leader, just like we did a couple of weeks ago when who was it? Was it Tom Hoge? that won for us at 60-1. He was the easy button first round leader at the CJ Cup. However, your easy button first round leader, the guy who's going to be the best guy in the field after Thursday, it's none other than, I can't believe it, Cameron Davis. Cam Davis at 50-1 is going to be your first round leader at the CJ Cup 2022. Congratulations, everybody. You just won a bunch of money.
That's it. It's that simple. You bet it, you win money. I suggest you get it in now, because once Vegas hears this podcast, that number is going to plummet. So you're going to want to get it in before that goes down. But like I said, if you haven't already, give us a follow. Hit the like button. It goes a long way. Feel free to subscribe. You're getting a ton of information. We're making money. We're having subscribers hit almost weekly for a big fish. Did I forget anything, Sia?
Well, you forgot to mention that David will be in Discord with a few additional plays, outright plays. And if for anybody who hasn't already started following David at Deep Dive Golf, like, hey, follow him. But when you follow him in Discord, like, the plays are just like listed in there, not just on the PGA Tour, but in the DP World Tour as well. It's pretty phenomenal, David, the work you've done. But I think more importantly, honestly, is somebody
Sports.
Wrong. Sports.